Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dimly lit attic, Louis took cautious steps, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight, as if sharing the burden of his grief. Sunbeams, determined to pierce the gloom, found a small window, creating a mesmerizing dance of dust particles. Amid this ethereal display, Louis's auburn locks fell across his face as he brushed them away, revealing a pensive gaze surveying the attic's treasures. The recent loss of his beloved grandmother had left an emptiness that echoed in every corner of the attic. Yet, in this sanctuary of memories, he discovered solace, even if tinged with sorrow. Their afternoons together, filled with storytelling and gardening, were etched into his heart. Now, as he embarked on organizing her possessions, Louis's fingers lingered on the aged items, stirring both grief and intrigue. His attention soon fastened upon an imposing steamer trunk, its corners gleaming with brass in the subdued light. With a deep breath, he unlatched the clasps and lifted the heavy lid. The scent of lavender and aged fabric wafted up, transporting him back to his grandmother's closet. Inside, neatly folded and wrapped in tissue paper, lay a treasure trove of vintage clothing. Louis carefully lifted out each piece, marveling at the intricate details and quality craftsmanship. At the bottom of the trunk, a flash of white caught his attention. He reached in and pulled out a stunning 1950s tiered lace skirt. The delicate fabric cascaded through his fingers like water. Beside it lay a matching pearl-buttoned satin blouse, its soft sheen still vibrant after all these years. Louis held the outfit up, admiring how the light played off the fabrics. Without thinking, he pressed the blouse to his chest, imagining how it might look on. A strange feeling stirred within him, a mixture of longing and excitement he couldn't quite name. Glancing around the empty attic, Louis bit his lip. He'd always been curious about women's clothing, but had never dared to explore those feelings. Here, alone with his grandmother's treasures, he felt a sense of safety and permission. Before he could talk himself out of it, Louis slipped off his t-shirt and jeans. With trembling hands, he carefully put on the satin blouse, marveling at how smooth it felt against his skin. The skirt followed, settling around his waist with a soft swish. Louis turned, catching a glimpse of himself in an old mirror propped against the wall. His breath caught in his throat. The person staring back at him was different, softer, more authentic somehow. He smoothed his hands over the skirt, watching how it moved with each gesture. A smile tugged at his lips. For the first time in his life, Louis felt truly comfortable in his own skin.
"This is who I am,"
he whispered, his voice barely audible.
"This is who I've always been."
In that moment, Louis knew he could no longer deny the truth. He wasn't Louis at all. She was Heidi. Heidi spent the next few hours lost in a world of silk, lace, and memories. She tried on dress after dress, each one awakening a new facet of her personality. An emerald green cocktail dress made her feel elegant and sophisticated. A floral day dress brought out a playful, carefree side she'd never known existed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the attic floor, Heidi reluctantly changed back into her male clothing. But the genie was out of the bottle. She knew she could never go back to living as Louis, pretending to be someone she wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Heidi spent every spare moment in the attic, exploring her grandmother's collection and herself. She learned to walk in heels, perfected the art of applying lipstick, and practiced speaking in a softer, more feminine voice. During this time, she also began researching the process of transitioning. It was daunting, but the thought of continuing to live as Louis was even more terrifying. Heidi knew she had to be true to herself, no matter how difficult the journey might be. One sunny afternoon, Heidi sat at her grandmother's old vanity, carefully applying mascara. She'd become quite adept at makeup, learning through countless YouTube tutorials and hours of practice. Her auburn hair, now grown out a bit, framed her face softly. "I wish you could see me now, Grandma," Heidi murmured, blinking at her reflection. "I think you'd understand. You always saw the real me, even when I couldn't." A knock at the door startled her. "Louis, are you up there?" Her mother's voice called from the bottom of the attic stairs. Heidi froze, mascara wand hovering in mid-air. She'd been so careful to keep her true self hidden, terrified of her family's reaction. But in that moment, looking at herself in the mirror, she knew it was time. "Coming, Mom," she called back, her voice wavering slightly. Heidi took a deep breath, smoothed down her floral dress, and made her way to the stairs. Her mother's eyes widened as Heidi descended, taking in the dress, the makeup, the undeniable femininity of her child. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Oh, sweetheart," her mother finally whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Is this who you really are?" Heidi nodded, her own eyes filling with tears. "Yes, Mom. I'm Heidi. I'm your daughter." To Heidi's immense relief, her mother opened her arms wide. "Then come here, Heidi. Let me hug my beautiful daughter." They embraced, both crying and laughing at the same time. It wasn't going to be an easy road, but in that moment, Heidi knew she had her mother's support. It was more than she could have ever hoped for. Over the next few months, Heidi began the process of transitioning. She started hormone therapy, feeling more comfortable in her skin with each passing day. Her family, while initially surprised, rallied around her with love and support. Throughout it all, her grandmother's vintage clothing collection remained a source of comfort and inspiration. Heidi carefully cataloged each piece, researching its history and learning proper preservation techniques. She even started a blog, sharing her journey and her love for vintage fashion. As Heidi's confidence grew, so did her wardrobe. She scoured thrift stores and estate sales, adding to her collection of vintage pieces. Each new find was a treasure, connecting her to the past while allowing her to express her true self in the present. One day, while volunteering at a local theater's costume department, Heidi met Claire, a vivacious redhead with a passion for historical fashion. They bonded over their shared love of vintage clothing, spending hours discussing different eras and designers. "You have to see my collection," Heidi said excitedly as they left the theater one evening. "It's mostly my grandmother's, but I've been adding to it." Claire's eyes lit up. "I'd love to. Vintage clothing is like touching history, don't you think?" Heidi nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. It's like each piece has a story to tell." The next weekend, Claire came over to see the collection. Heidi led her up to the attic, now transformed into a proper storage space for the vintage garments. Claire gasped as she entered, taking in the racks of clothing and accessories carefully arranged throughout the room. "This is incredible, Heidi!" Claire exclaimed, running her hand reverently over a 1940s suit. "Your grandmother must have had amazing taste." Heidi beamed with pride. "She did, and she taught me to appreciate quality and craftsmanship." She paused, then added softly, She also taught me to be true to myself, even if she didn't know it at the time. Claire turned to her, a question in her eyes. Heidi took a deep breath and shared her story, how discovering the vintage clothing had helped her discover her true self. To her relief, Claire listened with empathy and understanding. "Heidi, that's beautiful," Claire said when she finished. "Thank you for trusting me with your story, and for sharing this amazing collection with me." From that day on, Heidi and Claire's friendship deepened. They spent countless hours exploring vintage shops together, comparing notes on fashion history, and supporting each other's dreams. Claire even helped Heidi organize a vintage fashion show to raise money for LGBTQ+ youth. As Heidi stood backstage at the fashion show, adjusting her grandmother's pearl necklace, she felt a sense of completeness she'd never experienced before. She was living authentically, honoring her grandmother's legacy, and using her passion to make a difference in the world. The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our organizer and model, the lovely Heidi." Taking a deep breath, Heidi stepped out onto the runway. The lights were bright, the music pulsing, but all she felt was joy. She glided down the catwalk in her grandmother's 1950s tiered lace skirt and pearl-buttoned satin blouse, the very outfit that had started her journey. As she reached the end of the runway, Heidi struck a pose, her auburn hair gleaming under the lights. The audience burst into applause, and she saw Claire in the front row, grinning and giving her a thumbs up. In that moment, Heidi knew that she had found her place in the world. She was preserving the past, embracing the present, and looking forward to a future filled with authenticity and self-love. And she knew, somewhere, her grandmother was smiling down on her, proud of the woman she had become. The fashion show was a resounding success, raising awareness and funds for LGBTQ+ youth in their community. Heidi's story, shared in the event program, touched many hearts and opened minds. She received countless messages of support and gratitude in the days that followed. Inspired by the positive response, Heidi decided to expand her vintage clothing business. She opened a small boutique in town, showcasing carefully curated pieces from various eras. The shop quickly became a haven for fashion enthusiasts and those seeking unique, quality garments. Heidi took great care in selecting each item for her shop. She would spend hours at estate sales and auctions, her trained eye spotting hidden gems among piles of discarded clothing. Each piece was carefully cleaned, repaired if necessary, and lovingly displayed in the boutique. The shop, which Heidi named Timeless Threads in honor of her grandmother, became more than just a business. It was a community hub where people could explore fashion history, share stories, and find pieces that made them feel beautiful and confident. Claire became a frequent visitor and unofficial collaborator, often helping Heidi style window displays or organize themed events. Their friendship continued to grow, blossoming into something deeper as they spent more time together. One quiet evening, as they were closing up the shop after a successful day, Claire turned to Heidi with a nervous smile. "Heidi, I was wondering, would you like to go out to dinner with me? Like, on a date?" Heidi's heart skipped a beat. She'd been developing feelings for Claire, but had been too afraid to act on them. "I'd love to," she replied, her face breaking into a radiant smile. Their first date was magical. They went to a charming little restaurant that served cuisine from the 1920s, complete with period-appropriate decor and music. Heidi wore a stunning flapper-style dress from her collection, while Claire donned a dapper suit inspired by the same era. As they sipped on classic cocktails and shared stories, Heidi felt a sense of completeness she'd never experienced before. Here was someone who understood and appreciated every facet of her passion for fashion, her journey of self-discovery, her dreams for the future. The months flew by, and Heidi and Claire's relationship deepened. They became partners in every sense of the word, in love, in business, in life. Claire's background in marketing helped expand Timeless Thread's reach, and soon they were shipping vintage pieces to customers all over the country. Heidi's family, who had been so supportive of her transition, welcomed Claire with open arms. Family dinners became lively affairs, with Claire and Heidi's father engaging in friendly debates about the merits of different historical eras, while Heidi and her mother swapped fashion tips. As their one-year anniversary approached, Heidi knew she wanted to do something special for Claire. She spent weeks planning, wanting everything to be perfect. On the big day, Heidi led a blindfolded Claire up to the attic where it had all begun. She had transformed the space into a romantic tableau with soft lighting, flowers, and a table set for two. "Okay, you can look now," Heidi said softly, removing the blindfold. Claire gasped as she took in the scene. "Heidi, this is beautiful." Heidi smiled, taking Claire's hands in hers. "This is where I found myself, Claire, where I discovered who I truly am. And now, I want to share it with you in a special way." She led Claire to two dress forms set up in the corner. On one was the 1950s outfit that had started Heidi's journey, the tiered lace skirt and pearl-buttoned satin blouse. On the other was a beautifully tailored 1950s men's suit. "I thought we could have a little dress-up date," Heidi explained, "to celebrate how far we've come and the era that brought us together." Claire's eyes welled up with happy tears. "Oh, Heidi, it's perfect!" They changed into the outfits, helping each other with buttons and zippers. When they were done, they stood before the old mirror, admiring their reflections. "You know," Claire said, wrapping an arm around Heidi's waist, "I fell in love with you because of who you are on the inside, your kindness, your passion, your strength. But I have to say, you look absolutely stunning in vintage clothing." Heidi laughed, leaning into Claire's embrace. "And you make quite the dashing figure yourself." As they sat down to their candlelit dinner, Heidi raised her glass in a toast. "To finding ourselves, to honoring the past, and to building a beautiful future together." Claire clinked her glass against Heidi's. "I'll drink to that." As they enjoyed their meal, talking and laughing, Heidi felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey hadn't been easy, but it had led her here, to a life filled with love, purpose, and authenticity. She glanced at the framed photo of her grandmother she'd placed on a nearby shelf. "Thank you," she whispered silently, "for everything." In that moment, surrounded by the vintage clothing that had shaped her life, with the woman she loved by her side, Heidi knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The future stretched out before her, full of promise and possibilities, and she couldn't wait to see what adventures it would bring. As the years passed, Heidi and Claire's love only grew stronger. They worked side by side, expanding Timeless Threads into a thriving business with a loyal following. Heidi's expertise in vintage fashion and Claire's business acumen proved to be a winning combination. Their shop became a must-visit destination for fashion enthusiasts from all over the country. Heidi took pride in not just selling clothes, but in sharing the stories behind each piece. She would often spend hours with customers, helping them find the perfect outfit that made them feel confident and beautiful. Heidi's blog, which had started as a personal journey, evolved into a respected resource for vintage fashion lovers and the LGBTQ+ community alike. She used her platform to advocate for transgender rights and to promote body positivity, always emphasizing that fashion should be inclusive and empowering for everyone. On quiet evenings, after the shop had closed, Heidi and Claire would often retreat to the attic. They'd put on some classic vinyl records, don vintage outfits, and dance among the racks of clothing. These moments, filled with laughter and love, were Heidi's favorites. "You know," Claire said one such evening, twirling Heidi under her arm, "I think your grandmother would be so proud of everything you've accomplished." Heidi smiled, her auburn hair catching the light as she moved. "I like to think so. Sometimes I feel like she's here with us, watching over everything." As their dance came to an end, Claire suddenly dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket. Heidi's breath caught in her throat. "Heidi," Claire began, her voice full of emotion, "you've shown me what it means to be truly authentic, to embrace who you are without apology. Your strength, your kindness, your passion, they inspire me every day. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy streaming down her face, Heidi nodded emphatically. "Yes! 1,000 times yes!" The ring Claire slipped onto Heidi's finger was a beautiful vintage piece, a delicate Art Deco design that perfectly matched Heidi's style. Their wedding was a celebration of love, authenticity, and fashion history. Heidi wore a stunning 1950s wedding gown from her collection, lovingly restored to its former glory. Claire opted for a classic tuxedo with vintage cufflinks and a pocket watch that had belonged to Heidi's grandfather. The ceremony was held in a picturesque garden, with friends and family gathered to witness their union. As they exchanged vows, Heidi felt a sense of completion. She had found her true self, her life's passion, and her soulmate. At the reception, Heidi and Claire surprised their guests with a fashion show featuring friends and family members modeling pieces from different eras. It was a joyous celebration of diversity, love, and self-expression, everything that Heidi and Claire stood for. As they cut the cake, a magnificent creation decorated to look like a stack of vintage hat boxes, Heidi caught sight of her reflection in a nearby mirror. She saw a confident, happy woman, surrounded by love and living her truth. It was a far cry from the confused, conflicted person she had been when she first discovered her grandmother's clothing collection. Later that night, as they swayed together during their first dance, Claire whispered in Heidi's ear, "You know, I think we should expand the attic. We're going to need more space for our growing collection." Heidi laughed, her heart full of love and excitement for their future together. "I think that's a wonderful idea. We have a lifetime of fashion adventures ahead of us." As the years went by, Heidi and Claire's love story became something of a legend in their community. They were living proof that being true to oneself could lead to happiness beyond imagination. Timeless threads flourished, becoming not just a shop, but a sanctuary for those exploring their identity through fashion. Heidi never forgot where her journey began, in a dusty attic with a trunk full of her grandmother's clothes. She kept the 1950s tiered lace skirt and pearl-buttoned satin blouse carefully preserved, a reminder of the moment she discovered her true self. Every so often, she would take them out, run her fingers over the fabric, and whisper a quiet thank you to her grandmother. For the clothing, yes, but more importantly, for the strength and courage that had been passed down through generations. And as she hung the outfit back in its place of honor, Heidi would smile, knowing that she was living the life she was always meant to live, authentic, passionate, and filled with love.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!